There are recordings that are never meant to be heard, messages left in the dark of night that serve as a final insurance policy against a world that wants you silenced. If you are listening to this, you are stepping into a territory where the truth is more dangerous than any fiction Hollywood could ever script. We begin with a voice from the grave, a voice that belonged to a woman who saw the belly of the beast and refused to blink. Virginia Giuffre. Before she was found dead in Western Australia, shortly before the most explosive files in modern history were set to be unsealed, she left a message that should haunt every person currently holding power in the entertainment industry. She said, and I want you to feel the weight of these words, that she was making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form was she suicidal. She told the world that if something happened to her, we must not let this go away. She knew the clock was ticking. She knew that when you name the monsters hiding in plain sight, the monsters tend to bite back. The year is now 2026, and the echoes of that warning are louder than ever. We are witnessing a pattern of silence that is as deafening as a gunshot in a library. Look at the icons of our culture. Look at the faces we welcomed into our living rooms every afternoon for decades. Ellen DeGeneres, the woman who taught the world to dance, the queen of kindness, the relatable neighbor with a billion-dollar smile. But look closer at the timing. 2022 was supposed to be just another year of transition. Instead, it was the year the facade began to crack with the force of a tectonic shift. As Ghislaine Maxwell sat in a cell, as the depositions began to peel back the layers of a global trafficking network, Ellen's empire didn't just end, it vanished. The show was shuttered, the estates were sold in a frantic fire sale. Reports began to swirl of a sudden flight to Australia and then to England. It wasn't a retirement. It felt like an evacuation. The questions are no longer whispered in the shadows. They are being shouted from the rooftops. What exactly did Ellen DeGeneres know? Why did her executive producer, a man known to the world as Twitch, end his life in a nondescript motel room just as the legal pressure reached a boiling point? They say he left a note mentioning darkness and challenges. In the world of the elite, darkness isn't just a mood, it is a destination. Some employees describe the set of her show as having the atmosphere of a military prison, a Guantanamo Bay of daytime television. But the connections go deeper than a toxic workplace. They lead back to a private island, a blue and white striped temple, and a list of names that the most powerful lawyers in the world are currently dying to keep hidden. We are talking about 25 individuals, 25 protected souls in the entertainment industry who were shielded under secret settlements. These are the untouchables. These are the people who were bought and paid for so that the secrets of the Epstein machine would never see the light of day. While Ghislaine Maxwell serves her time in a prison where she reportedly enjoys the luxuries of a private laptop and bottled water, these 25 people are walking the streets of Los Angeles and New York. They are attending galas, they are signing deals, and they are hoping that you forget. But how can we forget when the evidence is staring us in the face? From the strange set designs that mirrored the architecture of Epstein's private island, to the chilling jokes made on national television about facials derived from the skin of the young. What was framed as a joke now tastes like ash in the mouths of the public. We are told it is all a coincidence. We are told that the timing of these deaths and departures is merely a statistical anomaly. But in the world of high-stakes corruption, there are no coincidences. There are only carefully constructed narratives that are finally beginning to fail. The primary whistleblower is gone. Virginia Giuffre is no longer here to testify. She spent 17 years in a prison of her own making, once even trying to swim into the black void of the ocean at night just to escape the reach of her captors. She survived the island, she survived the threats, but she did not survive the final release of the files. Her death, ruled by some as a tragedy of timing, stands as a grim marker on the road to the truth. She told us not to let it go. She told us to watch the people who turned a blind eye. Because they weren't blind. They were right there, blatantly in front of the victims. Doctors, dentists, producers, and superstars. They all watched the recruitment of 14-year-old girls. They all watched as children were told they were too old by the time they reached 17. And they all kept dancing. But the music has stopped. The lights are coming up in the club, and the faces we see are not the ones we thought we knew. This is the story of an underground ring that harvested more than just innocence. It is a story of stem cells, of rituals, and of a hunger for longevity that knows no moral bounds. It is the story of how a Mary Poppins figure and a daytime dancing queen became the pillars of a structure built on the broken lives of the vulnerable. You have heard the rumors. You have seen the headlines. But you haven't seen the whole picture. Not yet. To understand where we are going, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to look at how a socialite from England transformed herself into a monster, and how she used the glitter of Hollywood to hide the blood on her hands. Let us go back to the recruitment. Let us look at the method to the madness. Because the truth is not just out there. It is buried under the floorboards of the most famous sets in television history. And we are about to start digging. Imagine an image of absolute trust. A high society profile, impeccable manners, and a pedigree that opened the doors to the world's most private estates. This was the mask of the network's chief facilitator. To those she sought out, she didn't appear as a threat. She appeared as a gateway. She was a sophisticated mentor to the global elite, a woman who promised luxury travel and a departure from a mundane existence. But beneath those polished vowels lay a psychological architect of systemic control. Her role was not merely to find new additions to the circle, it was to align them with the system. She specialized in the slow, strategic integration of individuals into a highly specialized environment. Many were brought into the fold at an incredibly vulnerable stage, long before they could grasp the scale of the machinery around them. Because she presented a maternal, sophisticated image, the world's natural defenses remained down. Who would suspect such a figure? She convinced them they were chosen, that they were unique, and that she was their protector. But the protection was a closed loop. Once inside the private townhouses and secluded estates, the persona shifted, revealing a cold, calculating manager who oversaw every detail of their environment. The true nature of this operation is found in its private correspondence, where individuals were discussed with the cold detachment of an inventory report. In their eyes, the human element, the mind and the dreams of an individual, was a disposable byproduct. Their private communications suggested that the essence of a person was something to be discarded, while only the physical presence was retained as a high-value asset. This is the calculated, industrial-scale dehumanization that powered the machine. Only the body had value. And Ghislaine Maxwell was the one who prepared the meal. She understood the mechanics of the market she was serving. She knew that in the eyes of the monsters she catered to, youth was a currency that depreciated with every passing second. By the time a girl reached 16 or 17, she was told she was too old. Imagine the psychological devastation of being told your life is over, that you are spoiled goods, before you are even legally allowed to drive a car. For decades, this duo moved through the highest echelons of society like ghosts. They were at the weddings of presidents' daughters. They were at royal birthdays. They were the invisible glue holding together a dark alliance of power and perversion. But the clock finally ran out on July 2nd, 2020. The scene was far from the glamour of the Upper East Side. It was a secluded million-dollar estate in New Hampshire, a place where Ghislaine thought she could disappear into the woods in the fog. She had spent millions trying to stay hidden, using shell companies and burner phones, living like a fugitive in a high-end bunker. When the authorities finally breached the perimeter, the myth of the untouchable socialite shattered. The woman who once dictated the seating charts of the world's most exclusive galas was led away in handcuffs, a far cry from the Mary Poppins who had lured so many into the dark. But even behind bars, the influence of the Maxwell name didn't fully evaporate. As she awaited trial and eventually began her sentence, reports began to surface that suggested her prison experience was unlike any other. While whistleblowers like Virginia Giuffre lived in a state of constant fear, Maxwell was reportedly living in a bubble of relative comfort. Private visits, access to a laptop, bottled water. In the American penal system, these are not standard issue. They are the perks of someone who still knows where the bodies are buried. It was a slap in the face to the victims who spent 17 years in their own mental prisons. One victim, driven to the brink of madness, once attempted to escape the island by swimming into the black, churning waters of the ocean at night. She would have rather drowned in the Atlantic than spend another hour in the presence of the woman the world now knew as a monster. The arrest of Maxwell was supposed to be the end of the story. It was supposed to be the moment the dome of silence finally shattered. But instead, it only raised more questions about the people who weren't in that New Hampshire house. It raised questions about the 4 co-conspirators who were mentioned in legal filings but never charged. Who are they? Why are their names still redacted in the public record? There are 4 individuals who walked the same halls, flew on the same planes, and watched the same crimes. Yet, they remain ghosts in the machine. They are part of the 25 names hidden in the secret settlements. As Maxwell's deposition began in 2022, the panic in Hollywood and Washington reached a fever pitch. This was the same year that Ellen DeGeneres, the golden girl of daytime, decided to pull the plug on her 2-decade-long reign. The public was told it was because of a toxic workplace scandal involving her producers. But when you look at the map of these events, the toxic workplace seems like a convenient smokescreen for something much more radioactive. The coincidences are stacking up like bodies in a thriller. The arrest, the deposition, the sudden end of the show, and the tragic, mysterious death of the man who knew the show's inner workings better than anyone. We are looking at a web that stretches from the granite hills of New Hampshire to the sunny sets of Burbank, and every strand leads back to the same dark center. The Mary Poppins of the elite may be in a cell, but the house she built is still standing, and its foundations are made of the secrets of the people you still see on your screens every single day. The shrimp philosophy didn't die with Epstein. It just went underground. And now, as we look toward the Zoro Ranch and the new investigations of 2026, the head of the beast is finally being forced into the light. The cameras never show you the silence after the music stops. For years, Stephen Boss, the man the world knew simply as Twitch, was the heartbeat of American daytime television. He was the joy, the rhythm, the infectious smile that told millions of viewers that everything was going to be okay. But behind the bright lights of the Ellen DeGeneres set, a different kind of energy was vibrating. In December of 2022, just months after the show that defined his career reached its sudden, forced conclusion, Twitch checked into a motel room in Encino. He didn't choose a luxury suite. He didn't call a friend. He walked into a mundane, 3-story building, a place where no one would recognize him, and he took his own life. The official reports say it was a tragedy of mental health, but in the corridors of power, the word tragedy is often used to mask a much more sinister reality. Reports began to leak about a note left behind, a note that spoke of challenges, a note that mentioned a darkness he was facing. What kind of darkness haunts a man who spent his days dancing for the world? To find the answer, you have to look at the environment where he spent his final professional years. Former employees didn't describe the set as a dream job. They described it as a place of fear. They called it a Guantanamo Bay of entertainment. It was a culture of silence, a place where you were told when to smile and when to look away. And Twitch, the man who stood at the center of it all, was the keeper of the show's most intimate secrets. Think about the timing. 2022 was the year the Epstein House of Cards finally began to spill its internal contents into the legal system. It was the year Maxwell's depositions began to name names that made the walls of Hollywood tremble. And it was the year that Ellen DeGeneres, the woman who had survived every scandal for 30 years, suddenly walked away. People don't walk away from billion-dollar empires because of a few mean tweets. They walk away when the ground beneath them starts to liquefy. Then there is the visual evidence that is hiding in plain sight. For years, viewers sat in their living rooms and watched Ellen perform on a set that featured a very specific aesthetic: blue and white stripes, a specific architectural geometry. To the average person, it was just modern design. But to those who have studied the aerial photographs of Little St. James, the private island owned by Jeffrey Epstein, the similarities were more than just a coincidence. They were a mirror. The temple on Epstein's island, with its strange blue and white stripes and its occult-like symmetry, found its echo in the very studio where America's most famous host welcomed the world's biggest stars. Is it possible that these designs were a signal? In the world of the ultra-elite, symbolism is a language. It is a way of saying, "I am one of you," without ever opening your mouth. When investigators look at the set of the show, they don't see a stage, they see a tribute. They see a connection to a network that values a very specific kind of aesthetic, one rooted in the private playgrounds of the world's most powerful predators. But the darkness Twitch mentioned wasn't just about set design. It was about the things that happened when the red recording light went off. There are stories of celebrities who entered that studio and left looking like they had seen a ghost. There are rumors of inner sanctum gatherings where the hospitality went far beyond the typical green room perks. When you are the executive producer of a show like that, you aren't just managing talent. You are managing information. You are the filter through which the truth must pass. And in 2022, as the legal net around the Epstein associates began to tighten, the weight of that information became a death sentence. The motel room in Encino was a world away from the glitz of the Oscars or the warmth of the daytime stage. It was cold. It was anonymous. And it was the final destination for a man who may have known too much about the 25 names hidden in those secret settlements. If you look at the trajectory of everyone connected to that inner circle, a pattern emerges. Those who stay quiet are rewarded with villas in the English countryside or private laptops in prison cells. Those who show cracks, those who might break under the pressure of a federal deposition, tend to find themselves in motel rooms or Western Australian clinics shortly before they can speak. The silence that followed Twitch's death was profound. There were tributes, yes. There were tears on social media. But there was no investigation into the challenges he mentioned. There was no deep dive into why a man at the height of his fame would choose such a bleak end. Because to ask those questions is to pull on a thread that leads directly to the heart of the Hollywood machine. It leads to the harvesting of more than just talent. It leads to the realization that the people we watch on our screens are often just masks for a system that views human life and human death as a simple cost of doing business. The darkness is real. It is woven into the fabric of the sets we love and the icons we admire. And as we look at the empty stage where a dancing queen once reigned, we have to ask ourselves, was the dance ever real? Or was it just a distraction from the screams coming from the basement? The year 2026 is finally bringing the answer to that question. The depositions are no longer secret. The names are leaking out. And the temple, whether it's on a private island or a soundstage in California, is finally being torn down. But for men like Twitch and women like Virginia, the truth is coming far too late. The music has stopped, and all that's left is the cold, hard light of the morning after. There is a specific kind of arrogance that comes with absolute power. It is the kind of arrogance that allows a predator to hide their secrets in the one place no one thinks to look, right in front of your eyes, disguised as a joke. For years, the elite of Hollywood have whispered about the Fountain of Youth. They have appeared on talk shows with glowing skin, defying the natural laws of aging, and when asked for their secret, they laugh. They mention facials derived from the skin of the young. They talk about baby foreskin treatments, as if they were discussing a new brand of herbal tea. The audience laughs along, conditioned to believe that the absurdity of the statement is its own proof of innocence. But as the year 2026 reveals the deeper layers of the Epstein files, those jokes have taken on a nauseating, metallic aftertaste. Investigative journalists like Chris Hansen have begun to pull back the curtain on a reality that sounds like a fever dream from a dystopian novel. We are talking about an underground market for stem cells, harvested from the most vulnerable among us to fuel the vanity of the most powerful. This isn't just about expensive creams. This is about a biological harvesting ring that treated human life as a raw material. In the world of the elite, longevity is the ultimate luxury, and they were willing to pay any price to secure it. The allegations suggest that the trafficking network managed by Maxwell and Epstein wasn't just providing massages for the powerful. It was providing the biological components for a secret industry of elite wellness. When you hear a celebrity joke about consuming the vitality of the young to stay beautiful, you are hearing a confession wrapped in a punchline. But while the world focuses on the gruesome details of these rituals, the real story is written in the ledgers of the court. There are 25 names, 25 individuals in the entertainment industry who were granted the ultimate protection, legal immunity through secret settlements. These are the 25 people who were shielded while the rest of the world watched the spectacle of the Maxwell trial. These are the names that were redacted in black ink, buried under layers of non-disclosure agreements and high-priced legal maneuvering. They are the ones who were in the rooms. They are the ones who watched the 14-year-olds walk in and the broken ghosts walk out. And yet, they remain untouched. They are the protected 25, the architects of a silence that cost countless lives. Compare their freedom to the life of a victim who spent 17 years in a prison of her own mind. One survivor spoke of the sheer scale of the betrayal, noting that it took an entire ecosystem of professionals to keep the machine running. It wasn't just Epstein and Maxwell. It was the doctors who performed the examinations. It was the dentists who fixed the teeth of the girls. It was the security teams who guarded the gates. They weren't blind. They were right there, staring at the horror every single day. And they chose the paycheck over the person. They chose to be part of the blind eye society, where the suffering of a child is just background noise to the clinking of champagne flutes. And then there is the ultimate insult, the reality of Ghislaine Maxwell's incarceration. While her victims are still waking up screaming in the middle of the night, while they are still trying to swim away from the memories of the island, Maxwell is reportedly living a life that barely resembles a punishment. She has been described as having access to a private laptop, consistent supplies of bottled water, and private visits that bypass the standard protocols. In the federal system, such perks are unheard of for someone convicted of her crimes, unless, of course, that person is still serving a purpose. Maxwell isn't just a prisoner, she is a hostage of her own secrets. Every day she breathes is a day she holds the leverage of those 25 names over the heads of the elite. The bottled water and the laptop aren't comforts. They are the price of her silence. This is the shrimp philosophy in its final, purest form. The heads, the victims, have been thrown away. Their stories are treated as discarded husks, useful only when they can be used to generate a headline or a documentary. But the body of the organization remains intact. The 4 co-conspirators who were never charged are still out there. The 25 protected individuals are still directing movies, hosting shows, and influencing the culture you consume. They are the ones who believe that if they just wait long enough, if they just keep the legal ink black enough, the world will eventually look away. But they didn't count on the voicemail. They didn't count on the women who refused to stay in the own prison they were assigned. They didn't count on the fact that by 2026, the digital footprint of their crimes would become a permanent stain. The harvesting of stem cells, the rituals of the elite, and the protected list of names are all converging into a single, undeniable truth. The fountain of youth was built on a foundation of blood, and the people who drank from it are finally starting to show their age. The mask of the kind host and the posh recruiter has slipped, and underneath we see the cold, calculating faces of those who thought they could buy their way out of judgment. But as the investigation moves toward the high desert of New Mexico, the time for secrets is running out. The protected 25 are about to find out that no settlement is large enough to silence the ghosts of the past. The road to the truth does not end in a New York courtroom or a London estate. It ends in the dust of the high desert, where the wind howls through the canyons of New Mexico. This is the site of Zoro Ranch. For years, this massive property was whispered about as the ultimate sanctuary for the elite, a place where the rules of man did not apply, and where the secrets were buried deeper than the foundations of the main house. But today, in 2026, the silence of the desert is finally being broken. The newly established Truth Commission has begun a forensic excavation of the property, and what they are finding is rewriting the history of the Epstein empire. We are no longer talking about mere rumors of tunnels and hidden chambers. We are talking about physical evidence of a system designed to disappear people. The Zoro Ranch investigation is the final frontier. It is the place where the 25 names on that protected list likely spent their most guarded moments. It is the place where the shrimp philosophy was practiced without the fear of prying eyes. As the commission peels back the layers of this New Mexico fortress, the public is forced to confront a terrifying reality. The scale of this operation was global, but its heart was right here in the American Southwest. The ranch wasn't just a home, it was a laboratory for the exercise of absolute, unchecked power. And as the truth emerges from the sand, the individuals who once felt safe behind their secret settlements are finding that the desert has a very long memory. We must remember the human cost of this silence. We must remember the woman who, 17 years ago, stood on the edge of a private island and looked out at the black, churning Atlantic. She didn't see a vacation destination. She saw a graveyard. She was so broken, so desperate to escape the reach of Maxwell and Epstein, that she threw herself into the freezing water at night, choosing the mercy of the sharks over the kindness of her captors. She survived, but she spent the next 17 years in a prison of her own making, haunted by the faces of the people who watched her drown while they sipped their cocktails. Her story is the heartbeat of this investigation. It is the reason we cannot look away. It is the reason why the not suicidal declaration of Virginia Giuffre must remain the rallying cry for everyone seeking justice. Virginia knew. She knew that the system is designed to protect the predators and pathologize the victims. She knew that when you strike at the king, you better not miss. Shortly before the most critical files were set to be unsealed, she was silenced. But her voice lives on in the recordings, in the depositions, and in the growing movement of people who refuse to accept the official narrative. The question is no longer whether these crimes happened. The question is how much longer the world will allow the 25 protected individuals to remain in the shadows. How much longer will we allow the Mary Poppins of the elite to receive special treatment while her victims are left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives? The empire of silence is crumbling, but its architects are still trying to rebuild the walls. They are selling their estates. They are fleeing to foreign countries. They are changing their names and hoping that the digital tide will eventually recede. But the year 2026 has proven that some stains do not wash away. The connection between the daytime dance floors of Hollywood and the dark bunkers of New Mexico is now undeniable. The harvesting of innocence to fuel the longevity of the elite is no longer a conspiracy theory. It is a line of inquiry for federal investigators. As we stand at this crossroads, we must ask ourselves what kind of world we want to live in. Is it a world where 25 names are more important than the lives of 1,000 children? Is it a world where a billionaire's settlement can buy a permanent mask for their crimes? The Truth Commission at Zoro Ranch is our last best chance to ensure that the answer is a resounding no. The victims have done their part. They have swum through the darkness. They have spoken from the grave. Now, the responsibility falls to us to ensure that their words are not just heard, but acted upon. The music has stopped, the lights are on, and for the first time in decades, we can see exactly who has been hiding in the room. We appreciate you for staying with us through this difficult and necessary investigation. It is your attention and your refusal to forget that keeps the pressure on those who would prefer to remain in the shadows. If you found this report important, we ask that you please subscribe to our channel and like this video. It helps us continue to bring these stories to light and ensures that the voices of the victims are never silenced again. We want to hear from you. How do you feel about the existence of the 25 secret settlements? Do you believe that true justice is even possible when the names of the perpetrators remain hidden by the legal system? Or have you perhaps seen similar patterns of silence in other parts of our culture? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every one of them. If you find it difficult to put your feelings into words after hearing this, simply write "Thank you" for our work. It means a great deal to us and supports our continued efforts to find the truth.